on WATN in high definition. It's Local 24 This Week with Richard Ransom.
Welcome to Local 24 This Week, where we bring you the real story behind the big stories every Sunday morning. Before I introduce my roundtable, here's what's on tap for this week's show. First up, Corker's exit interview. Local 24 News reporter Drew Petrimo snares an exclusive one-on-one interview with Bob Corker. We'll talk to Drew from Washington about his impressions of the outspoken Tennessee Republican senator. Next, a Vanderbilt poll out this week rates statewide politicians from top to bottom. Wait until you see where Corker ended up, as well as the others, Haslam, Lee, Blackburn, and Alexander. And we'll talk about this week's major school consolidation proposal by the outgoing Shelby County School Superintendent, as well as this week's City Council meeting. What are my panelists hearing about what may or may not happen 2 weeks after some council members actually walked out of a meeting? We will get to all of that in a moment, but first let me introduce this week's roundtable. Susan Adler-Thorpe is a political consultant with Thorpe Communications. You also see Local 24 News political analyst and commentator Otis Hanford, who is here as well. So what we want to do first is introduce Drew Petrimo and his report that we had this week, the exclusive interview with Bob Corker as he talked about his career, his 12-year career in the Senate. Let's watch that first, and then we'll hear from Drew on the other side.
I'll miss being able to weigh in.
Tennessee Senator Bob Corker has found himself neck deep in some of the thorniest issues of the last decade, from the financial meltdown and auto bailouts to a litany of foreign policy crises all across the globe.
We've done really well at getting our uniform dirty on every play and getting involved in the big issues.
Among his biggest victories, Corker counts an effort that's brought electricity to more than 50 million people in Africa, and another aiming to free millions of people from modern slavery. Corker visited 75 countries during his time in office, producing some of his most memorable moments.
To see the devastation and what people live through, and to see what the United States of America means to people like that, pretty moving.
But Corker admits he's leaving without accomplishing one of his most important goals. He ran on a promise to improve the country's fiscal outlook. He retires with the U.S. almost $22 trillion in debt.
We have not done well at solving the fiscal issue.
Recently, Corker became best known for his complicated relationship with President Trump. While he likes some of the president's policies, Corker is one of the most vocal Republican critics of the president's rhetoric.
It's just not a good example for the young people of our country. It's just not. And it affects everyone.
And as he says goodbye and prepares to head back to Tennessee, many speculate Corker may return to the national spotlight, maybe even to challenge President Trump in 2020.
I have no idea what I'm going to do. Is it a possibility? Maybe.
Reporting from Washington, I'm Drew Petrimo, Local 24 News.
And that gives us lots to talk about. Drew Petrimo is in Washington right now. So, Drew, thanks for sharing that with us. Tell me, what were the other impressions you had of him, maybe some comments you didn't share that you weren't able to get into the story?
Well, you know, what he talked a lot about is how much he enjoyed being in the Senate and really the leadership role that he took on. We talked a lot about the overseas travels, but we didn't get into some of the stuff he did more domestically. Kind of made a name for himself during the financial crisis and the auto bailouts, really kind of being the go-to guy with the expertise on that issue that was really able to kind of dive in, kind of when he would say that the country needed him most in those dire weeks and months during the financial crisis. So he talked a lot about that, talked about his work with Democrats. You know, a lot of people look at Washington and say that it's broken and that the two parties can't work together, but he's been able to forge bipartisan compromise on the Foreign Relations Committee, worked a lot with Senators Coons and Durbin on some legislation that he finds really impactful. And then obviously, you know, a lot of people want to hear his thoughts on the current state of the Republican Party in 2020, so he talked about that a lot as well.
You know, what's interesting to me, Drew, and I'll see if you agree with this, is Corker was someone who was not content to just kind of be under the radar, as a lot of senators are. They get elected over and over again, you never hear from them. You could argue that his cohort in the Senate is one of those senators, but Corker was not satisfied with that, and having a position like being head of the Foreign Relations Committee, you don't get much more responsibility than that.
And, you know, I think in today's day and age, that kind of really is what led to him to leave the Senate. He knew that the way that he operates and the way that he wants to speak his mind, that he would likely have some big trouble in a Republican primary because he's so outspoken when he sees, when he thinks the president steps out of line. And he knew that that would likely continue, that he would continue to have problems with the things that the president says, and that would likely doom him in a Republican primary. So, you know, he says that was one of the things that led him to decide to not seek re-election, to give him the freedom to continue to speak his mind.
Let me bring Otis and Susan into this. What do you think about what Drew is saying and just Corker's legacy, I guess, as
well? Well, obviously, I think his legacy is one that he has tried to reach across the aisle and be a compromiser on a lot of issues. He has been very outspoken on several issues, especially more recently, Donald Trump. He has been a real thorn in his side. I think he's accurate when he says he wished he could have done more on the fiscal problems that we have, the deficit and all of that. But I actually had a question for Scott, which was, since you've covered him so long, what does he think about the Republican leadership in the Senate, primarily Mitch McConnell and John Cornyn, who have not provided much oversight of this president at all? What does he think about that leadership?
Is that a question for me?
The leadership of the Senate and how Corker maybe really feels about them.
Well, you know, we didn't get into discussions about what he thinks about the other leadership positions in Congress. What I did ask him, though, is, you know, there is going to be kind of a void on the most critical Republicans in Congress of the administration. And, you know, I think that that's kind of where he said he didn't really know what his role was going to be as he leaves Congress. He said that, you know, because I asked him if he's going to continue to be kind of critical of the administration. Would he consider getting into some kind of a presidential race, a challenge to President Trump? And he stopped. There was one point where he just stopped and was like, you know, I haven't really decided what kind of a citizen I'm going to be. He kind of has the inclination, he says, as he did after he left being the mayor of Chattanooga, where he kind of let the new administration do its thing and didn't want to lob fireballs from the outside. But he said that he hasn't really decided in this case, you know, how he's going to handle that.
Interesting. I was very intrigued by his answer to your question about whether he would consider a primary challenge. Susan, what do you think? I mean, he certainly did not say no. He's thinking about it.
He's thinking about it. There's no question at all. I mean, this is a man who he's going to leave. You ask what will be his legacy. His legacy in Washington right now is a legacy of reason. And he knows all the world leaders. I was once up visiting Corker not long ago, and there were a couple sitting in his outer office waiting for us to finish. So, and that's a very powerful but very influential position. No, he doesn't agree with Donald Trump. He doesn't agree really with the optics of Trump and how Trump handles himself. There are many things that he does agree with Trump on Trump's policies, but it's Trump the man he doesn't like. And will he run against him? He's not going to say now. It would be a day in politics is equivalent to a light year. You never know what it's going to be like for the 2020 primary campaign. He'll wait and see what the lay of the land is then. But I can tell you this, if Trump's in the picture or out of the picture, and if Corker decides to run, he will make an impressive mark for himself. He's probably liked outside of Tennessee more than he is inside of Tennessee.
Well, that's obvious based on what we're going to talk about later with the recent poll. But he's going to have to improve those numbers because if you're not all that well liked in your own state, it's going to be very difficult to mount a national campaign where you're going to be taken that seriously.
His numbers will ride on what happens with Donald Trump.
Right.
And if Trump starts to plummet, you'll see Corker's numbers start to come down.
Last question for Drew before we let him go, and that is Marsha Blackburn, Corker's successor in the Senate. Drew, are you hearing anything about what kind of committee assignments she might get or wants? What kind of positions we can expect from her when she is sworn in here in a couple of weeks?
Haven't heard anything definitive on it, but she's been highly involved in technological issues, medical issue, kind of medical technology, kind of the cutting edge, some of the things that happen over in Nashville. So I know that she'll probably be looking to continue with that work. One interesting note, though, I did ask Senator Corker about his relationship with the senator-elect because they had some difficult moments there. Senator Corker is good friends with her Democratic opponent, Phil Bredesen. He did not actively campaign for her in that race, and he even at one point considered getting back into the race, which led to some harsh words from the Blackburn campaign. He says all that is smoothed over now. He donated to her campaign. He thinks she's going to do a good job representing the state. So despite their barbs, he assured me that relationship is on solid ground.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much, Drew. We appreciate it. We're going to take a break. We're going to talk about this poll that we've been referencing a couple of times. Very interesting numbers about Tennessee statewide politicians. We'll be right back.
I can tell you about my education and qualifications. I can tell you that I've received over $1 million from my clients from some of the strongest, most powerful insurance companies in America. But what I want to tell you right now is that when you select the Reeves Law Firm, you're not only a client, you're a part of our family. I have gone to war for my country, and I'm prepared to go to war for you. Call me immediately at 901-352-0333 or find me at beyourvoice.com. Let us be your...
Why wait to get Medicare coverage if you don't have to? Cigna Health Spring is here for you right now. If you're turning 65 or have low income or recently lost coverage, you may be able to get a Medicare Advantage plan from Cigna Health Spring. Call 1-866-623-5971 to learn more. There's no obligation. We offer plans with no monthly premiums and no primary doctor copays to help limit out-of-pocket costs. You can also get medical, dental, and prescription drug coverage all in one plan. With Cigna Health Spring, you get more coverage at a low cost, plus a team to help guide you toward better health. Don't go another day without finding the coverage that's right for you. Call Cigna Health Spring today at 1-866-623-5971. That's 1-866-623-5971. Cigna Health Spring. Together, all the way.
Never stop chasing the story. Be committed to being there.
I'm glad you're okay.
Oh, thank you.
On the scene, wherever the story may be.
You could hear the gunfire just around this wall.
Always reaching higher together.
Back on the job.
Back in the job.
Help build my country back.
Local 24 News at 5 with a news team you can trust. And World News Tonight with David Muir, America's most watched newscast. You're watching Local 24 This Week with Richard Ransom.
Back with my roundtable, continuing our conversation on the week's news, and Vanderbilt University out with a poll that has a lot of people talking this week, showing the popularity, or favorable ratings, I should say, of most of the statewide politicians, if not all. And Bill Haslam, not surprisingly, right at the top at 61%. Bill Lee, the governor-elect, at 57%. Senator Lamar Alexander, 48%. Incoming, Marsha Blackburn, the senator, 45%, and Bob Corker, the outgoing senator, who we've been talking about, tied at 45%, which I think is interesting. And I did put in there, but I think it's interesting too, even though Phil Bredesen doesn't have statewide office, he did just run a statewide campaign, and he was about 50%. So actually had higher favorabilities than the person he defeated, or did not, that he lost to, I should say, yeah. But what do you, give me your interpretation. We'll start with you, Susan, on where things sit with these statewide guys and gals.
You know, Bill Haslam is an outgoing governor. He's always had high numbers. He didn't do anything to make people really mad, and I'm not surprised that his favorables are 61%. And Bill Lee, he won really virtually in a landslide, but he's an unknown. So I think the 57%, it's not 60% yet. It's because people are just reserving what they think he could or could not happen. As far as Phil Bredesen beating Blackburn and Corker, it tells me that the voters really liked Bredesen. We all knew that. People respected him. He was a terrific governor. They really liked his history as a politician. But the Republicans who like Bredesen and knew he was a good man were not going to cross over and vote for a Democrat. They did not want to give another Democrat a seat in the U.S. Senate, so they either didn't vote or they held their nose and voted for Blackburn. And the 45% are the people who, half of them, I bet, held their nose and voted for Blackburn, but she won.
There was some nose holding going on. You have to, you look at those numbers, that's the only conclusion you can come to.
Well, that's the only one you can. I mean, I've never seen a poll this soon after an election where the loser, I mean, he lost big too, now has a more favorable rating than the winner. I mean, that is really, really strange. But what stuck out to me in that poll, Richard and Susan, is where Lamar Alexander is. Lamar Alexander is trying to decide right now whether he's going to run for a 4th term. And I talked last week with several Republican operatives, including Scott Golden, the state chair, who said that he had a conversation with him and he was still holding his cards close to the vest. But Scott said his gut tells him that he will run again. Some others are saying he will run again. I wrote a column on the Daily Memphian website that posted on Thursday telling him not to run again. And not because of his age, even though he'll be 80 years old when the election rolls around, but because he has served enough here. I mean, he has been, he was a governor back in the late 70s. He was an education secretary, and now he's been in the Senate for 3 terms. This is about the future, and I'm not sure that he really wants to get, because 2020 is going to be a firestorm based on what we're doing, what we're seeing right now. And I'm just saying that, you know, he's served enough, he's given enough, he has nothing else to prove. It's probably time for him to step aside. 48% is underwater, and we'll see what he does there, but I'm not sure that he's going to run again.
It's hard for politicians, we see it not only in the Senate, but elsewhere, to let go. Once they have reins of power.
It's very difficult to let go. I've seen it many, many times in politics. Lamar Alexander has also been a good public servant. He was a good governor at the time. He certainly helped Memphis in 1979 as a distribution center. And
he took over at a tough time with Ray Blanton in the scandal.
That's right. Very, very tough time. But that said, if he wants to win re-election the next time he runs, then he's going to have to appear in Tennessee a lot more. It is difficult to campaign in this state. We are a very, very big state. It is hard. It's physically challenging. And if he's up to it, that's fine. He needs to come back to Tennessee, boots on the ground, which he hasn't done a whole lot of in this last term in the U.S. Senate, and he's got to excite the electorate. Otherwise, if he gets a good opponent, even in the primary, he could lose.
All right, let's, one last question, and that is based on one other finding of the poll, and that's when they asked voters, so what do you think are the top issue of concern to you here in the state? Healthcare outpacing education and the economy. First time healthcare has finished at the top like that, and I just want to pose a hypothetical. What does that mean for Bill Lee, who has said he's not in favor of Medicaid expansion, even though that seems to be what the healthcare industry would like to see? We're doing stories just this week about another hospital closing, perhaps up in Ripley.
Right, and I think it poses a huge issue for Bill Lee.
This may be a time where Bill Lee, this one topic may be the time when he figures, when he's going to find out that politics is about compromise, successful politics, and that what I do know about Bill Lee is that he certainly has opinions, but he's open, and I think that he'll find that an easy one to go for, but he may not, you know, give all the Medicaid expansion people are wanting, but I think he'll ease up a little bit, and that tells me in that poll too, with health care being number one, is Tennessee has an aging population. Young voters don't care about health care. But as you get older, you start thinking more about it.
It's amazing how your perspective changes.
That's right.
Real quick, you weigh in on
I'm also going to say that it's really not all just about Bill Lee and health care. It's about this legislature.
Yes, absolutely.
And the legislature has shown time and time again that they are not interested in Medicaid expansion. Bill Haslam tried to get it done, called a special session to get it done, and they said, get lost. So I don't know. Maybe a honeymoon period would make the legislature more receptive, but I doubt it. This is still a very conservative legislature that wants to have absolutely nothing to do with anything that's tied to the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare.
Okay, we'll have to leave it there. When we come back, we're going to talk about the City Council and the big week ahead for them right after this.
You lock your doors, cars, computers, bicycles, and more.
Keeping your family safe can also be as simple as safely storing your firearm. I'm Richard Ransom.
And I'm Katina Rankin. Tragically, Local 24 News has had to report on far too many accidental shootings involving children.
So join us in helping prevent gun accidents, misuse, and theft by picking up a free Project Child Safe gun lock and other safety resources available at any of the 30 community and senior centers here in Memphis.
Local 24 cares.
Get ready for Grizz Nation Live, your weekly guide to the latest news, behind-the-scenes features, and play-by-play of your Memphis Grizzlies. It's Grizz Nation Live, tonight at 10:35, only on Local 24. Penny Hardaway.
Feels good, man, because, you know, it rolls back to when we were in school. You know, you were playing football, I was playing basketball, and now to make it come full circle and be the coach, it's an amazing feeling.
Anthony Miller.
Nothing's been given to me. I've always known, you know, with hard work, you're going to be rewarded. And I guess this is my reward.
James Wiseman.
All of these schools that's recruiting right now are great schools. They got great coaches. So all schools are even balanced right now, and I just got to weigh my options.
All went one-on-one with Local 24's Doc Holliday.
No, hey, you my guy.
Richard Ransom and Katina Rankin, weeknights only on Local 24 News.
Your mom said, comb your hair. Your dad told you, smarten up. Your dog is judging you right now. And your best friend just called you crazy. We all need someone who'll pull no punches and give it to us straight. Now, imagine getting your news like that. No bull, no spin, just give it to me straight. Straightforward news, straight to the heart of the story. ABC News, straightforward.
You're watching Local 24 this week with Richard Ransom.
All right, back on the show to talk about the City Council's big meeting coming up on Tuesday. First of all, do we think there will be a quorum? That's question number one, okay.
Yes, I think
so now let's tackle this other issue that Council Chairman Berlin Boyd is going to be facing with his restless City Council members and herd like cats. You know, they've got to fill this District 1 seat, Otis. We've been talking about it now almost every week on the show for a while, and they can't seem to come up with an agreement. There doesn't seem to be a compromise candidate that can come up through the middle. And so I'm hearing, and the NAACP seems to support that this week, saying they're in favor of a special election, which will be expensive, but that may be the only way out of this. What do you think?
I'm coming around to that notion here, because I think that's the only way to make this as fair as possible. Yes, it's going to cost some money, but there's already a special election scheduled for January, I think it's January 24th, to fill Mark Norris's state Senate seat. Attach this, or actually all three of them really, attach them to this election, have it all on that day. You know, there are enough representatives on the City Council to take care of business between now and January 24th, and this allows the voters to decide, because I don't think that they're going to have a compromise candidate, especially for District 1.
So correct me if I'm wrong, you have a special election to elect a candidate who will only serve for 9 or 10 months before you have to have another before the term is up.
Right.
Okay, but
good.
I've said on this show before, and I'll say it again. If there's any reason to spend the public's money, any good reason, it's for our right to vote.
Right.
And we have 3 seats on the City Council that should be filled, and we should vote for those 3 seats.
All 3 then?
I'm
coming around all 3 as well.
Put all 3 of them up there. Why not? Let us vote on them. And the missing 4 council members, they'll be back.
Can they also then, as part of some compromise, say, okay, we're going to do this special election, but we're also going to pass an ordinance or something that says this can't happen again?
Yes.
When somebody leaves the City Council, they don't get to just hold on to their seat because after they've won elected office somewhere else. Like
well, I hope so. As a matter of fact, I talked to Kim Conrad about that a couple weeks ago. He's open to that. He's going to try to push for some kind of either ordinance or some kind
Wouldn't that be a charter change?
It may be, and it may have to go to the voters. I think this is one time that the voters will say yes to that. But we cannot have this kind of thing happen again. And it's up to the city group and not rely on what the county's rules are for this to happen. I think it should happen.
I also want to talk about Dorsey Hobson, the outgoing school superintendent for Shelby County Schools, unveiling this week a $700 million plan over 10 years to close more than 24 schools, additions to some others, build some new ones, around a dozen schools. A fairly ambitious plan to unveil just 2 weeks before you're walking out the door.
Right.
And what new superintendent is going to, you know, they all have fairly big egos. Who's going to listen to what some of the guy before me had to say, or am I being too cynical
Well,
here?
you know, Dorsey Hobson has talked many times before about closing schools in different areas of the community. Now he comes out with a comprehensive plan. And yeah, he's leaving, he's going somewhere else, he's laying out this plan, and it could be, it's something that we ought to look at, it's something that the school board ought to take seriously. It's about progress into our new century and new schools and upgrading. And again, if we want to spend money and spend it wisely, let's do it on the education of our kids. And I think that it's an interesting report. I didn't get to read it all, I only read what's been published, but if you want to consolidate schools and get rid of some of the old rotting schools and consolidate these kids into more community schools, I'm all for it.
But what Dorsey learned firsthand, the hard way, is that's not easy to do. No. People are very attached to this school.
Absolutely, and this is the most comprehensive proposal that he has made since he's been in that position. And to roll it out right now, as you say, 2 weeks before he leaves, or 3 weeks, or whenever it is, a proposal like this needs a public face and a public voice to carry it through. And he won't be around to do that.
Well,
who's going to do it?
He's putting it on the lap of the people that we elected to the city school board. Let's let them put their public face.
But it's not their proposal. It's his proposal. Now, maybe the interim superintendent, Joris Ray,
because he's leaving, doesn't make it a bad proposal.
I'm not saying it's a bad proposal, but somebody has to be the face of the proposal. And he rolled it out. Now he's leaving. Okay, you guys, you work it out for yourselves. I'm going to Cigna.
Well, he's got a staff.
I'm going to Cigna. Okay.
I'm going to make more money.
I'm going to make more money at Cigna. Yeah. Not that he was doing too badly at the
right.
superintendent either. All right, we'll take a break. We'll be right back to wrap things up.
A lady pulled out in front of me and I had no time to stop.
Car or truck wreck? You know who to call.
Another attorney referred me to NST Law.
At Nahon, Saharovich & Trotz, we get lots of referrals each year, even from other attorneys. Call 683-7000.
From day one, NST Law and their staff made it very easy to talk to them.
Let us take care of you the NST way.
I was very pleased with the settlement that NST was able to recover for me. NST, they are great.
Call 683-700.
Never stop chasing the story. Be committed to being there.
We're glad you're okay.
Oh, thank you.
On the scene, wherever the story may be.
You can hear the gunfire just around this wall.
Always reaching higher together.
Back on the job.
Back in the job.
Help build my country back.
Local 24 News at 5 with a news team you can trust. And World News Tonight with David Muir, America's most watched newscast.
Lock your doors, cars, computers, bicycles, and more.
Keeping your family safe can also be as simple as safely storing your firearm. I'm Richard Ransom.
And I'm Katina Rankin. Tragically, Local 24 News has had to report on far too many accidental shootings involving children.
So join us in helping prevent gun accidents, misuse, and theft by picking up a free Project Child Safe gun lock and other safety resources available at any of the 30 community and senior centers here in Memphis.
Local 24 cares.
It's gonna be a good day. So let's get it started. Turn it up, turn it on. Keep the morning moving right along. Yeah, waking up my day. You make it feel alright. Good day, Memphis. It's a day, so tell me what's the word on Local 20.
Wake up with Caitlin Lockerbie, John Paul, and meteorologist Chelsea Chandler on Good Day Memphis. Weekday mornings 5 to 7 on Local 24.
And that's all we have time for this week. My thanks to Otis and Susan for being here, and Drew Petramo as well in Washington. And thank you as well. Ransom at localmemphis.com is the email if you'd like to weigh in on today's show. We'll see you next week, folks.